So what with Portfolio, I think you look at the person, see where the person begins, where hopefully help the person identify where he or she wants to go and how they want to get there. So it's the development of the person that to me is at the heart of, and I don't think that has changed. It's been reconfirmed in the teaching process. The change is constant. I think when you asked me the question, I had a number of students who graduated. I was teacher or just director of Portfolio over the years who will let me know and say, well, geez, Dave, I'm still working on this stuff. And now I'm looking back and say, yes, some of those skills were important, some are not so important, some have come up. So there is a real transformation in the person. And there's been I've been able to integrate a lot of the actual curriculum into in terms of students beginning to reflect on what they're doing and what is the meaning of their learning. So what we try to do in human services, emphasize the skills inventory, transferable or employability skills piece, all the reflective piece, the personal profiles, how they present themselves. It helps the student realize that the mark is an indicator for us, some currency that's used outside, right?
Yeah, sure.
But in the real life, the experience of the learning that took place and their growth and development is better reflected in a portfolio format. I'll give you one. We were talking about cultural factors in sociology, right? Well, and where I am, it's a high number of Mi'kmaq people, and so what we actually set up a forum, albeit pretty informal, with our students sat around a table and looked at really in an honest way what we have in common, what we have differently, and this sort of stuff. And it was part of sociology, right? And the most important part of that, I think, was when they left it as individuals and as a group member and reflected on what happened in the session, what made sense, what did they learn, questions like, what did you know already and it's just being reconfirmed, what questions did it bring into it. So they're not the usual standard curriculum stuff, and they express that creatively in whatever way you want, but through their portfolios. But in that, so you see that discussion outside of Marxism or structuralism or all the theories of sociology was very, very meaningful, because you had a group of people living in a situation where they interact, and some of the prejudice and some of the the stuff that some blatant, some not, came out in it. But more importantly, they walked away from it and took 2 or 3 classes to get over, to think about it. I don't mean traumatically, but just to think about the learning. It's mostly in the evidence, apart from research you do, the evidence we have is primarily at the moment anecdotal in the college. We have gathered some empirical evidence in terms of jobs and that kind of stuff, and the graduate survey. There is some evidence that of the relationship of the portfolio experience to the job. I think it would be much more effective, powerful, useful if we could build up a body of evidence.
Right.
Perhaps we need much more time with faculty to get them to understand A, what it's about, clearly what it's about, and B, and just as important, if we were to give them the tools so that students can use them effectively. I've got a particular bias, and they all know it, and I try to emphasize more digital and try to get them away from the binder, 3-ring binder, and not surprisingly, students begin to open their eyes and say, oh yes, well I can, and for a whole number of reasons, see why it's much more appealing. I think we've come some way. In your areas is in the ePortfolio side, and that's the side I think we're doing some good things in. But we're picking up a pebble on the beach, and we're now, as far as what we've done, right? I'm talking about overall. I'm not talking about in IT courses or programs or in PR or whatever specialized. I'm talking about the whole college population. That there's incredible opportunity, especially the generation we're now coming into with who are coming in and to our doors are a younger crowd who are so comfortable with Facebook and the like of that as means of communication, that we can offer them not only in terms of digital resources, but a whole number of resources of the tools that we haven't. But in order to in order to offer the tools, you got to know it as a faculty member, staff. You know, you got to know what's available, and you got to understand what you're on about. And I think we got work to do there. You know, portfolio was something that PR people had, and models had, and artists and that sort of stuff, right? Whereas now the language of an e-portfolio is a language that they know. So I think that didn't come out of our thing, out of our 2002 survey. But looking back at it, it makes more sense. Right? One of its greatest assets would be the student's sense of ownership. That way, right? If you're feeding into peers, if you have a wider audience in terms of who you relate to, sometimes you're relating to employers, potential employers. Sometimes it is the faculty or a number of faculty. Yeah. And I think that's why, you know, I started this conversation by saying the portfolio is personal, it's about development. Well, the system, or whatever word you're going to use, the process you're now describing to me, really moves it up to a different echelon in terms of it becoming really the student, or let's say what it is, the person really is the focus of the whole growth and development. It's also much more accessible, right?
Right.
To an external audience.
Right.
Right. So it gives you, which in the traditional sense, yeah. I hope I didn't give you the impression that I was confining digital ePortfolio simply to a photocopy of our artifact. That wasn't it. I mean, when I'm saying digital resource, is what you said in terms of the opportunity of a system, of a process where you relate to others. There's a lot of peer and self-assessment, a lot of integration, and I think that's what I was implying and saying. I mean, I'm quite comfortable, to say another way, more positive way, Steve, with the way you're articulating, and I think students will be much more comfortable in that kind of environment that gives and actually, yeah, I mean it takes up to a different level in terms of age of knowledge that we're into now, which it changes the nature of learning and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I think that's very, very positive. Yeah. My experience is that will require an institutional commitment for us. It will require, and correct me if I'm wrong, a fair amount of PD.
Oh, absolutely.
Across the board. I mean, if things I could change, it may have been to start with a small pilot, start with a group of faculty, start with a group of who they don't have to be all keeners. They don't have to be all, certainly, and that's another myth out here, right? They all have to be IT experts. I think the mindset, right? The culture. I mean, as good as we are, institutions, and oddly enough, educational institutions tend to be reactionary.
Yeah.
And we often think of ourselves as being extremely revolutionary, even when we think we're way ahead of it. But we have our own processes, which sometimes dictate how we do things. Our own systems built in, whether it's information systems, financial systems, or just the policies and procedures that are often hard to change. I mean, it's going to happen anyway. Someone else will do down the road. I mean, we may get quite complacent. I suppose that's another obstacle you may want to. It's easy to become complacent, right? Someone else will do it. I mean, it was like Portfolio when we started. Now you can thousands and thousands of sites with Portfolio, with beautiful language and people doing the right thing. So we're not alone. And the greatest obstacle in my mind would be the shifting of the culture, and that would, I think, had to be translated. So you had to get buy-in from, as you know only too well, Stephen, from the middle and upper management, echelons of management. But then to be able to provide the PD. Because I think once, if you do it the route you're going, I think once you can demonstrate, and I'm sure as I'm sitting here you can demonstrate, how effective it will be, it will spread, and people will buy into it.